Well, the Turkey Day holiday is over, and frankly, Americans went out and spent money like nobody's business. Latest numbers have come in indicated this year, Americans during the Turkey Day holiday, Black Friday, call it whatever you want to, spent over $11 billion. You heard me right, over $11 billion. And roughly 53%, nearly 53% of that was spent online. Now, what does that tell you, America? Well, everybody's saying the price of everything is up, the economy's gone bad, nobody can afford anything. That explain why Americans went out and spent those many billions of dollars, over $11 billion, just in the Thanksgiving weekend alone. Now, they call it Black Friday. You ever wonder why they call it Black Friday? Well, here's something you may not know. For most retailers, the first part of the year leading up to Black Friday, as they call it, they are running in the red. That means they ain't making money. But they wait until Black Friday, and that's what it calls that Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, is the day they go from being in the red to being in the black. And then for the rest of November and all through December, when they're selling most of their goods, that's when they really make their profit for the year. Now, that's the way it is with many, many companies out there that operate. And that's why we call it Black Friday, because that's when companies that have been operating from the red for most of the year suddenly start operating in the black. Now, you know why it's called that. But the bigger story is America spending money. And here's the biggest concern for, well, a lot of folks. A lot of that spending was done on credit cards. The amount of credit card debt that America now has is, well, probably the largest it's ever been in history. And people are faulting on their credit cards simply because, well, they can't pay them. But that's the one thing they want to use. They know that credit is always there. Let's pull out the card and use it. And as a result, this year, around $11 billion was spent just during the Thanksgiving weekend, spending money for Christmas. And most of it, like I said, about 53%, was spent online. Now ask yourself, did you buy everything online this year? Well, that's what's happening, folks. A lot of local stores are suffering simply because people are either too lazy or not interested in going out and being part of the crowd to shop for things. And if you can't sell your product online, well, people aren't going out to buy it. And that is a big problem for America, because America, we are now depending more on what stores will send us via the internet, whether it's on Amazon, eBay, or whatever the website you're shopping on, because that's the way we're buying our stuff in today's world. Is that a harbinger of doom for the future? Depends upon whom you ask. Could very well be the problem that, well, we don't use money anymore. And when we don't use money anymore, we use, well, those credits on our bank says we have X amount of dollars in our bank. We don't really use cash money. We use a card to pay for stuff. And more people are using just that. And there's people in the government that want to switch to digital currency. And this is something you need to know about. Digital currency is basically, well, no longer using cash, no longer using real money. Because remember, the government just stopped making pennies because it cost about a nickel to make every single penny. And you don't start breaking even until you start making dimes. So eventually you're going to see pennies are going to disappear. And what's going to happen? Well, if you get a number that's, say, 23 cents, you may have to spend 25 cents because there's no more pennies to give you back. But if it's 22 cents, you'll say, okay, we'll round it down to 20 cents. Either way, you're either going to win or you're going to lose, depending upon where you fall in the scale. So that's what we've got going on, folks. So we had Black Friday, Thanksgiving weekend. America spent roughly $11 billion approximately, and 53% of it was spent online. America's going online, and America's going farther into debt, and eventually it's going to catch up. All depends when, where, and how it catches up with you.